Hey team, and welcome. I'm your host, Carrie, creator of Mother Life, your destination for all things real talk and parenting. This is the IRL group chat, where we talk about the wild balancing act of pursuing careers and passions while also doing our best to show up for our kids. Join me every week as I sit down with some badass parents in my closet and we talk about their careers, kids, and relationships and all of the weird shit that comes up when you're trying to balance the seemingly impossible. The almighty algorithm. Basically, step-by-step instructions that tell a program what to do based on all sorts of information about the user. What they've done before, how old they are, how much money they make, whether or not they have kids. Algorithms seriously shape our online lives by pushing us towards things that can trap us in easy, addictive loops. But before the big tech talk of algorithms, the analog world was already serving up its own version, pushing us down well-trodden paths from experiencing divorce or addiction, eating habits or religious beliefs. How we grow up is our own algorithm in many ways, our brain's cheat code for making decisions the easiest way possible. Lucky for those of us who don't love every single thing about our past, we've moved past this looking at algorithms and wondering what they're doing to us, feeding in information to help shape ourselves rather than just letting old patterns win. We learn from the examples we want to model, and over time, our algorithms adjust. It's sweaty work, but as today's guest says, you could do the hard work now or do the even harder work later. Today's guest had me thinking a lot about the digital and the analog and the patterns in our lives because he's someone who both lives in the deeply organic creative space of making real music with real people, and also he's an open-eyed optimist about what technology could bring to all of our lives to make life genuinely better for people. Billy Mann is a Grammy Nominated multi-platinum, multi-hyphenate. He's a songwriter, producer, artist, executive, podcaster, entrepreneur, Philadelphia-loving husband, and father of 4. You've been listening to his chart-topping music for literally decades, from his long-standing collaboration with Pink to his work with Sting, Celine Dion, Cher, Backstreet Boys, David Guetta, Robyn. I actually will take up the whole episode if I keep naming them all. His latest collaborator is episode 54's Shawn Stockman with their Chosen Family project. Billy makes music because he wants to connect, to bring people together in a real way, to be the conduit for feelings that are sometimes hard to say out loud on our own. Today's episode reads kind of like a Forrest Gump movie in all of the best ways. There's the magical, the mystical, the poetic, the epic, the seemingly impossible. It's all there and all built on a foundation of grit and failure and a drive to optimize the algorithm for our lives. Enjoy and share with a friend. Welcome to the virtual closet. How are you and where are you?
I'm home. I'm in, the way my home is set up is this is like, believe me when I say this to you, it's still a shock to me. But I have a separate house that's connected to the main house where I have my recording studio and place. So this is part of that sitting room.
Dude, to be fair, like, you earned it, man. I know,
Oh,
like, and we're gonna get into the humble beginnings that is Billy Mann, but like, you're literally in your background for people who are listening and can't see. There's all of your accomplishments are hanging on the wall, or some of them. I mean, you've got multi-platinum everything right behind you. So it's like we know how you got to that house that's your recording studio.
um, it's been a great journey. I'm not like I'm very proud of it, but I also, we're also living in a world where the metrics and measurables that people use for success have changed, and I love that about it because it's actually a much more level playing field for artists, but it's still nice. It's nice to know you've accomplished a lot in a tough business. So thank you.
Brutal business. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about today because I've actually really been enjoying your Instagram because there's a lot of good reminders of just like how fucking hard it is to do something hard. And there's one thing that you posted, I think last week, and I think I've told everybody since that I've talked to you about it, where you were like, how fast would you run to fail if you knew that it was only this many fails until your success? And man, have I just been like telling myself that on repeat, telling my friends that on repeat, because doing something hard turns out is actually quite hard.
I mean, I also think it's like people have to choose what's hard for them because there's short-term hard and long-term hard. Either way, it's going to be hard. So you have to kind of decide which, like, it's like a person's health. It's like you can decide that you go through the hard task of changing your lifestyle, whether it's your diet or exercise or something today, or you can wait years into the future where you have a health crisis, and that is also hard. And if you can sort of get in front of that, I think, constantly juggling um, that balance. And I think it's hard, but there's the little things that nag at you, and being willing to fall on your face is one of them. Who we are is made up of these prompts and challenges that we have, and like, what do we do with them? I have my own podcast, which is called "Yeah, I Fucked That Up."
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
fucked that up.
it's what's cool is it's not a gotcha podcast. It's more to go to people to talk about when they have fucked up and what came after. So I talked to a lot of, you know, celebrities. I talked to Michael Bolton and Kelly Rowland and Renee Elise Goldsberry and Peter Asher, Ali and AJ, Liz Gillies, Shelley Wright. It's a pretty rich group of people, and I've learned so much just listening to how people reflect on when they have fucked up and what has changed. So I think, in the
Season 2 is
context of
coming out soon, right?
working on season two now, and just incredible people, but also um to kind of normalize it. It's like everything has
Yeah.
to be so perfect. I mean, we have put literally filters on our phones to make us not look like ourselves. So I think we're look, all of these, I don't know, episodes or chapters, um it all leads into what do you do in these uncomfortable moments of your life. I mean,
Billy,
we're all
were
making choices.
were you always this like Yoda Zen man?
I think I was always trying to look underneath things and understand things, and I think uh music was like a great methodology for that as a kid. But no, I mean, listen, I mean, we all start off as dumb kids. So um I think it's more the outside forces that engage you at lots of different ages that that can move you in different directions. I was lucky. My parents were both like introspective people and more analytical, creative, and intellectual type of people, and so it was encouraged for me to like to do that. Almost, and actually, what's interesting now is like I look at my kids, and I want to make sure they're having fun and not looking so deeply into everything, because that's an endless well.
It really is. And do you think, like, I think a little bit right now we're kind of experiencing maybe an overcorrection where everybody is going so deep within themselves all of the time about everything that it almost makes every interaction that much more loaded. Like, at least I can speak for my own age group. I feel like we're all sort of the product of the therapy generation. I love therapy. I think everybody should spend some time thinking about how to help themselves. But I saw an article recently the other day that was like, there's something about the self help zeitgeist right now that's actually making people a little bit more selfish and a little bit less community oriented, because it's like somebody asks you to do a favor or somebody needs some help and you're constantly saying like, well, does that cross my boundary? Is that where my boundaries are? And like maybe we're going a little bit too far the other way where we're so focused on ourselves that we're forgetting that we are part of a bigger community.
I mean, there's a lot of layers to that. I think one of the core ones is the irony of the digital world. It's like we're super connected. Everybody's connected, instantaneously connected. It's not like, when I was a kid, it's like, oh, I'm going to call my friend. It's like, boom, boom, boom. I got to walk into a room, pick up a phone, and dial a number, and then hope he's there and see who answers. And if not, leave a message on a voicemail. I mean, that's not it. It's literally like, I'll text him. or let me see where my friend is. I have their location, or let me look on social media and see. So I think there's a the irony is that we're so hyper connected, and yet kind of people have greater loneliness and isolation. So I think I think there's a lot of overcorrection and undercorrection, and I it's going to take us a minute to figure that out.
Well, I mean, I think so. One of the reasons why I was excited to talk to you is you obviously have this new album out with Shawn Stockman, Generation Us, with your kind of collab Chosen Family. And I feel like a lot of, I mean, it's a love letter to Philadelphia, and we have to talk about why Philadelphia people are obsessed with being from Philadelphia because it's so true. But also, there's a lot in there about the technology piece and this, like, I think it is Generation Us, that title track, where you guys really go into where we are in this cultural moment in history.
Mm.
And I can hear you guys singing almost as parents in this song about what you're watching happen all around you, right?
Yeah, Sean and I, and one of the really cool things about the Chosen Family Project is that we grew up in the same city. We went to the same high school. We sang in the same choir. Um, and we had very similar experiences in many respects. And I think you don't know when you get together with somebody in any creatively or anything that you know from childhood. But there's a shorthand, right? You immediately move to a familiarity. And Sean and this other friend of ours, Clay, who we went to high school with, when we got together, the prompt, I guess, um, made it very easy to go into those places, the Philadelphia place, because we were all from Philly. But also the like reflecting on our childhoods, because that's where we're anchored.
Yeah.
And then you look at it as parents, and you know, as I think you know, Sean and I are both autism dads, and we share that, and that was part of the prompt too, which is, um, you know, it's another kind of parenting when you have a special needs family. So I think that song and the project all is woven into this um, reflection of where we are as men, as parents, as dads, but also looking back at when we first met, where we were. And there's like the big gap between when we were hanging out in South Philly together at Big Pete's, and then, you know, I'm talking to you from my really nice place, and he's talking to you from his really nice place, and we have really nice lives, and we did not start off that way. So
Yeah.
it was very reflective, and I appreciate you listening to the music.
I mean, I loved it. It's like a crazy mashup of a lot of genres, first of all, must be said. But all of them, I think there's something about specifically a summer camp kid, and a lot of my listeners I know were summer camp kids who are really going to resonate with this music because there's a certain like timelessness to this music that's very like singer-songwritery, but also has some nostalgia from our youth in a different way that I think is going to speak to people the way it spoke to me. And one of the things that I talked to about Shawn, and we're going to go back to Little Billy, but let's stay on this for a minute. One of the things that I talked about to Shawn is the other piece there is like a lot of love for your parents comes through in this album, complicated relationships or not, but also the love you have for your partners. And so I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Shawn, which is how much, and tell me the truth, Billy, how much does your wife get the loving overtures that I heard in this music in real life? Because my husband's, and the reason I ask is my husband's a creative, he's a writer, and he writes beautiful things that he says are inspired by our love and our relationship. But on the daily, I'm like, empty the fucking dishwasher, bro. You know, like the duality of the actual lived life versus the creative expression is so different in this house.
You know, I think I had my allergic reaction to being the kid of divorced parents who didn't do it elegantly has always been a commitment to my marriage is first before everything. Um, Not everybody feels that way. I don't say it in a self-righteous way. To me, everything starts with me and my wife, Jenna. I mean, we have four kids. We have autism among our kids. Um, and I've always felt like two heads and four hands are better than separate, just as parents, no matter who your kids are and how they develop. Um, but some of it is luck. We have tons of friends who are divorced, great people, and it didn't work out. So some of it is luck, but I think I've always put that first. Anybody that knows me in the music industry, anybody that knows me in general knows that like I really put my wife and our marriage before everything else. So I think the music has always been connected in that way, and that is a way for me to, when we've had challenges with our kids, and like my oldest son who requires a lot of extra support. um it's a way to be loving and supportive of your partner. And I'm lucky that I have that vehicle, right? I mean, your husband has his vehicle as a
Yeah.
writer. I think everybody has a different way. There's somebody who may like handle the mowing the lawn, and that's their love language. Can also be like, I'm gonna take over Sunday mornings or whatever it is. I think my wife knows. I know that she knows that. I prioritize that. And as like a sidebar to people who think about your childhood, I think for me, um, my commitment to being a husband and a father and doing it properly was my reaction to my parents not doing it so well. And everybody has their own. And the inclination for most of us is to repeat the algorithm of behavior that we got from our parents, which if it's not good, it can be really fucked up, because all of a sudden your natural inclination, including mine, is for it to go bad.
Well, yeah, that's
Uh,
the thing is the examples is like my husband and I are both of our parents were divorced when we were young, and often sometimes we'll hit a novel situation and we're like, we don't have a roadmap for this. Like we
right,
don't know what this is supposed to look like. And
right.
it's really hard to rewire your brain when you
Yeah.
don't know what the right thing is.
Well, what's interesting is I think the first step is like, if you know that your algorithm isn't the healthiest, then you're halfway there.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
think the
for sure.
problem is when it's like I see this in people in my life where like you have I know people in my life where the spouses cheat, and their behaviors are all over the place, and then they have their kids who cheat in school, or their behaviors all over this, and they're like, how can this happen to me? And it's like,
It's like I
you
got
can't
some
say
idea.
anything. Right, exactly. But you know clue might be right in front of you. But I don't know. I think I think, just going back to where we started on this, I think the Chosen Family project has been a great articulation for us as men, as dads, and as old friends. That when we got to certain songs, Generation Us being one of them, it was really like we thought about our moms who have passed away.
Oh,
We
that
thought
killed
about
me.
we thought about our kids. And when we think about the world we're living in, and our world was, Philly as a kid was a tough place.
Yeah.
So, just like when we started this conversation, it's sort of like choose what's hard. And when it happened, it's like our beginning was hard. This is now a different hard.
Yes.
Um, and like, I don't know which is worse, the asphalt streets that I grew up in, or the digital streets that my kids are growing up in. And I
Yeah.
don't know. I I think both are equally perilous and scary. And if anything, the digital streets are scarier. And
Yeah.
I think that's something we're all going to have to figure out.
And then, okay, this is will be the last thing that I say in terms of the music, but Press Save, another song where there's like clearly this nostalgia for another time and this like awareness of the complexity of where you are now in this moment. And just talking about the reminiscing and the balancing between the kinds of hard and the kinds of beautiful that are
Mm.
these two things that really struck me. And also I think it's the kind of music you can make when you're like at it, you have to have moved through all the things you've moved through to write a song like that, right?
So it's interesting you mentioned that, because so many of our friends, my peers, that's been a standout song for them. because it really captures the painting of what happens when you take relationships for granted and you sort of reminisce on the simpler times. And simpler times sounds so ridiculous, but the chorus of that song for me is looking back on the days that I was like, I had no money, I was really scared, and I used to like sleep on people's couches. And if I was somewhere and wherever I was, I remember, hanging out with my friends or hanging out with a girl or whatever. And whether you like roll one up or you have a drink or whatever, waking up in the morning and looking at the ceiling and thinking, what am I going to do? And how awesome that moment is, even though it's scary, and like making sure that I press save, that I remember those moments. And I think we are so quick to like, on to the next about everything. And
Totally.
that made the making of this album amazing for me because we did get to do a lot of reflection.
Okay, now let's get to little Billy, youngest of three, Philadelphia boy through and through. And so you're growing up, parents didn't have a lot of money. You mentioned they were sort of creative. What was sort of, who was doing what professionally or otherwise in the home, your parents, as you were growing up?
I mean, my mom was much more of a hippie. Grew up in Mount Vernon, New York. Um, both my parents educated, both my parents PhDs. They split up. Their relationship ended. I want to say I was around 7. Um, I It was a series of events. We lived outside of Philly in Villanova, which is sort of the tail of what is considered the main line, but not the fancy part, but a really nice area. Um, and then we moved to the city, and that was a profound shift for me. I live with my mom. Um, my dad is a eating disorders counselor. He had a series of career changes. He started in auto parts or something, and then he went back to school and studied that. And my mom was a mom who then in the 70s got very, very politically active on for the Equal Rights Amendment for women, which a lot of people forget that it's in our lifetime
I
that women and people of color, and it's like it's really like it's crazy to me, but it's true. So my mom was active in that, and she really stayed a political activist. She was a teacher. She taught writing at Antioch College for adults and also at Temple University. And then she worked at a organization called PRONAC, Professional for Nuclear Arms Control, which basically rich people who cared about the proliferation of nuclear weapons funded this small organization that held events to try to raise awareness, um, to stop nuclear arms proliferation. And she was an activist most of her life. Um, but as a kid, for me, I was a good mess.
Say
My,
more, Billy. Say more.
I mean, I say this to my kids who are all my kids they're fantastic kids and they're all different.
Four is so many kids, Billy.
Yeah, some days it's like 360 kids, and some days, they like run themselves. They're pretty incredible and all different. But um my youngest, who's going into middle school, middle school, my other daughter said to me when she went to middle school, I don't know, we gave her a hard time about something, and she was like, "You guys, you got to go easy on me. I'm going into middle school. Those are the worst years of my life." And I remember her saying that, and I remember thinking, middle school was kind of the worst years of my life too. Um, but I moved around a lot of schools, Carrie. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but between the fourth grade and ninth grade, I was in, I don't know, 4 or 5 different schools.
And this is because you're
Uh,
just up to Michigas and like causing problems and being shenanigans and hijinks.
um, those are not the words that I've ever heard used about it. I was, I don't know how to put it. I mean, part of it is that I was in the suburbs and went in the city, and all of a sudden there's like fighting and racism and anti-Semitism and gang stuff, and like I just didn't. I wasn't prepared for it. Um, and in the fight or flight um, process, I was not a flight kid. I was a fight kid, and I was a big kid. So um, I didn't do well. Like when I was confronted, and I mean, it wasn't like it's interesting. The first school I went to, which was the Greenfield School, um, that was the first time I encountered like fighting, and there was a gang nearby that was attacked kids. I mean, it was just I just remember as little me being very sober to this reality. And when we first moved into the city, my mom sent me to a pizza place from where we were living, and it was 3 blocks from my house. And I had never like walked on my own, and I couldn't have been. I don't know, I was like 9. And I got the pizza and I walked back and I got jumped by 5 kids who beat me up. And like that was my point of entry. And I remember being so crushed. I still feel bad for that little me.
That's
Um,
terrifying.
because well, and it was also like I didn't understand why.
Right.
Because I was just a little kid walking down the street with a pizza, and some other kids who were bigger just thought it would be fun. Um so anyway, but I moved from that school. Then my grandmothers got together and all pitched in to try to send me to a private school, which also did not work out well because worse than the sort of the tough public kids where I was in were the wealthy, snooty kids that were all, you know, going on lavish vacations and break or whatever, and they were really, really they had a lot of confidence, these kids, and that I didn't do well there. And then I was sent to a school called Alternative Middle Years. This is one of the it was a pilot school in North Philly, and it was basically my parents were like, "You're going to go to this alternative school." My mom, who was very hippie-ish, was like, "You're going to go to the school, whatever." And I remember she drove me into North Philly, and this was going into the 7th grade. And North Philly, where it was not terrible on Broad Street, but it was a school inside an old building. You took an elevator up, and I remember my mom dropped me at the elevator, and she's like, "You're gonna do great." My mom was like super optimistic, like literally, like if we got burgled, she'd like invite someone. "Oh my God, that's a great outfit. You should come in and whatever." And he's like, "You're gonna do great." And there I am standing, and they had to buzz me in with like bulletproof plexiglass into this school. And I remember walking in there. This is 7th grade, so I couldn't have been 13, 12 or 13. And the kids in there, Carrie, were like, there was a girl who was pregnant. There were the kids who were there with like deltoids and like facial hair. And I was like, I just remember being like, these were not kids.
Yeah.
These were like this was so Alternative Middle Years was this program that was for kids who like me had been maybe not done well and had
By the
stuff
way,
at schools.
what a branding win for them. When you first mentioned the school, imagining you're like frolicking outside, weaving baskets and some shit, like the branding of this alternative middle years thing, like
Oh
good
no.
for them. Because that's not what I
But
was picturing when you first introduced it to the story.
it was not what I was picturing either. I was thinking like my mom's hippie stuff was going to be there, and we'd be like, it was not that. And somehow there was like a divine intervention, and the Philadelphia schools went on the longest strike maybe ever. I mean, like literally a month and a half, I think maybe 2 months. And eventually my grandmothers who had pitched in to send me to the other school basically said to my parents, and my grandmother was very influential. And remember, my parents were divorced, and it was not it
It
wasn't
wasn't
the
on friendly
easiest.
terms. Yeah.
No, it was okay. It was like it was disconnected and polite, but it wasn't aligned, right?
Yes.
And they were like, "You need to go to school." And so then I commuted from the city to Bala Cynwyd, which is just in the main line across City Line Avenue. And I would take myself as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and commute an hour and a half every day on public transportation, and then like walk a mile. I don't say this to my kids, but and then I'd go to this school, and it was still hard for me. but that school was a little more stabilizing.
Yeah.
And really, where I have friends from, childhood, they kind of begin there,
You were a Goldilocks, Billy. You were just looking for the right fit.
right, right. I was like a kind of
Some
urban
beds were
extreme
too
Goldilocks.
rough, some beds were too soft. You needed the
Right.
one that was just right, and then you got there. Now, in the backdrop of all of this, are you already, I mean, I know you were in the choir in high school, which we'll get to, but like are you already
Oh
doing
yeah.
music? What are you
I
up
was doing
to?
music since I was 5. I was playing guitar. I was singing songs with my sister, who would write bad poems, and we'd harmonize. My brother's a musician who plays drums, and he still works in music and sound in Florida. Um, no, music was always, it was really like where I could go, my outlet. I felt like that was, I got a lot of my stuff out with music. Um, and music always spoke to me like emotionally since I was a little kid. So I remember all those early records, and for my mom especially, it was very much an articulation of the time of a political movement. So all of like I remember one of the things that I did for my mom, who's since passed away, was she played Carole King's Tapestry to death. Like that record was on repeat. I mean, it was everything. Anybody that knows that era of music, it was like bell bottoms and incense. And like my mom had a woman's group where they'd like smoke weed and like cigarettes, and the cigarette smoke would try to hide the weed. So we
Sure,
never
sure,
thought they
sure.
smoked weed, but of course they did. And like, and years later, when my career started to get some traction, and I worked with Carol, who worked with me on my second solo album, I invited my mom to the studio in New York to see me writing and producing a Carole King song, and Carol there. And it was like the coolest thing ever. But music was an articulation of feelings unsaid in my house as a kid. It was
Mm.
the songs my mom would play, or what she was into, or what I would listen to, or what I was feeling. And I think the same was for my siblings too. It was kind of like doing the talking for us, which is what I think music does for a lot of people and should do.
I love hearing how people were so obviously in some way influenced by their parents, and both in your philanthropic work and your creative work, like you are clearly so much a product of growing up in a house with an activist, and also this introspection that you mentioned your dad. Like I heard you say somewhere else that like for a real artist, the closer you come to showing your true self to the world, I'm paraphrasing, is like the closer you get to being like the greatest expression of your creative self, something like this, right? And that also I think comes from your parents, right?
Well, I don't know. I don't think our parents' generation were very good at showing their true selves. I think it was one of the problems in the 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 era that most of our parents grew up in. Was It's too easy to say it was repressed, but I think it was much harder to, I mean, just look at the pure basis of sexuality. Like it wasn't uh, it wasn't like a discussion ever, like what was appropriate. And think
Yeah.
of the like how it, just on a musical level, like how metaphors needed to be deployed, and that they would be risked. Like Nina Simone singing I need some sugar in my bowl was like a risky lyric to sing, when today, just put on the Stallion, or you
WAP.
put on any of these, or the new Sabrina Carpenter record, and like you can make a lot of people blush, but nothing, comparatively speaking, would be as when you look back at our parents' generation. And there's a view that um you know innocence is gone, and I think that there's some truth to that.
Now, going back to little Billy, you are this little shit stir that's causing problems. You finally find the right place for you.
I never started a fight in my life, never.
Okay,
I was
so
but
he
but
didn't
my
stir
grand
the shit,
no,
but
my grandmother Lydia said to me, "Don't you ever start a fight, but if someone starts a fight with you, finish them." That was what I was
okay,
taught.
Grandma Lydia.
And she was like beautiful and amazing, but she was not, it wasn't like a,
She was scrappy.
no, you know what? She wasn't. She was very, I mean, that was just it. Like She raised her siblings, she's like, it was just, I did whatever she said, really. I mean, when I got married, my grandma Lydia is the one who walked me down the aisle and gave me away, not my parents. Like, she was very my
How did
person.
that go over, Billy?
I mean, I, I, I it wasn't an option for discussion.
Right.
I mean,
Everyone
I
got it.
yeah, everybody got it because we were very close, but also, I would say that, I mean, this is probably the most biting analysis I could say, at least with my parents, is that I felt that when my parents split up and I was very little and on my own, and really was on my own, too young, and worked since I was like 14 and jobs and things, that my parents, by virtue of them saying we have to find ourselves, and they sort of went on the backpack trips of their finding themselves lives and never really returned back to parenting me, at least, that they forfeited the right to legislate what they wanted in that wedding, which was a wedding that, like, they didn't contribute towards in any way. It was,
Totally.
so it wasn't really, there wasn't a discussion about it. It was more like, that's what it is.
Well, it's very sweet. And shout out Grandma Lydia.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about what you're saying as well is I love to ask people, and I think you know this, about their birth order. We know you're a youngest,
Yeah.
but in some ways it sounds like we've identified some ways where being the youngest was actually rougher on you, because by the time you were sort of growing up, your parents were sort of checked out trying to find themselves. Whereas
Well, I mean,
sometimes the youngest gets like a little bit coddled, a little bit mushed, but maybe that was less your experience.
I mean, yes and no. I think some of it is, my siblings are older than me. My by a lot of years, enough years that their version of childhood and my parents were married for uh, the majority of their childhood years. My parents weren't for me. So I had, like, my dad had a girlfriend and my mom had a boyfriend, and I was on my own, much more independent. And in many respects, it was a blessing because I wasn't raised metabolizing whatever toxicity was in my parents' marriage. So I was like
Mm,
free of that. So it's, it depends on how you look at it, right? I mean, you can look at it and be like, oh, my parents weren't around for me. On the other hand, it was probably good that my parents weren't around for me, in the respect that
together, yeah.
if it wasn't healthy, then I would be like being fed the poison milk, thinking that that's what healthy milk tastes like, which could really fuck me up in the future for
Yes.
myself and my own kids. So
Yes.
I think that there was some benefit to it, and it's uh it takes time to be able to reflect on that and see the benefit of it. But I
I
don't
say
really
that to
look
my
at.
siblings all the time, by the way. My parents got divorced when I was 2, and I'm like, I am so lucky because I don't even remember them being
Mm,
married.
yeah. And my wife Jenna, she's also the youngest of three, and look, even in my own kids, my oldest is 23 and my youngest is 11, and that's a pretty big spread. And um, and my older daughter, um, was saying, like, is my little one going to have like a better childhood than her? And my kids have had a great childhood.
Yeah, I bet they
And
have.
even, right, but even though it's a little tongue in cheek, there is some truth to it, which is, my little one's experience with us as parents is going to be different. First of all, that we're in a different place as special needs parents, because where our other kids are situated and established, and it's much less chaotic. That was a lot of pressure on my older daughter, who always handled everything beautifully, too beautifully. Like, she has every right to feel whatever she feels, and she's incredible. All the kids have had that experience. My little one is going to have a childhood from, you know 10 to when she launches out of high school, without that extra layer of stress. And that is going to make her have a totally different childhood experience. So I don't
That's
know.
so interesting, and it's so true.
So I don't know what your experience was. I think you're the youngest too,
Yeah.
but it's just like, it is a different it's a different experience,
Every
and
kid gets a different parent.
that's right. That's right.
Every kid gets a different parent. So now you and your journey, you now enter this like famed high school in Philadelphia for the performing arts. And you're there at this golden era with like a bunch of fellow badasses, and everybody's just crushing and doing projects. And you know, like Billy's doing music. This is your professional path at this point.
Um, my professional path was get out of Philly. That was all I was focused on, um, and Philly is an amazing city, and I love it. And I always joke with my other expat Philly friends, um, that it's a great city to be from, but I wouldn't want to live there.
Wait, I love that you're called
Um,
expat Philly people, because that is the best way to describe you people, because you go somewhere else, but you still love to be with other Philly people and talking about Philadelphia.
right,
That's perfect,
right.
literally.
Well, it's a cult, right? So you know, and it depends on, and it's it's a bit tribal. Like there are people that say, "Oh, I'm from Philly," but they're from like the bougie suburbs, and like real hardcore Philly people are like, mm, or I'm from Philly and they live in South Jersey, and real Philly people are like, it's a little, but in general, it's a great place to be from. But my experience then was I wanted to do music, and I wanted to get out of school. So I graduated high school in 3 years, got a scholarship, um, to go to Hampshire College, which is like a super hippie school in Amherst, Massachusetts. It is, I had never seen so many wealthy kids in my life. And I was so, and I was a work study student. So part of me getting the scholarship and the grants and whatever was I was working. And, it was okay. I mean, um, but I was just happy to get out. And then after my second year of college, my grants, there were like different Pew grants and whatever. Um, this is in the late 80s. There was like cuts to programs, and like I couldn't afford to stay in school, and I was ending my second year, and I went to my parents and my grandmother, and my parents were like, we just don't have the money. We can't afford it. So you have to figure it out. So I did my last 2 years of college in a year and an extra term, and I worked two jobs. And I don't even remember, like I remember the beginning of college, like I was like a college kid and did the thing, and then I don't even remember the last year of school. I just worked. I remember I was the um, graveyard shift operator at the school. This is a pre cell phone. So like if you wanted to call your
Oh,
kid or your
nice.
friend, you got the switchboard, and it was like, can you connect me with, the dorm would be like the Dakin third floor, and then someone would plug you in. I was the graveyard shift operator. So I would like I delivered pizza for a place called El Greco's Pizza, which was disgusting pizza, but
Sorry, El
good for
Grecos, if you're
late night.
still in business, good for you.
Not a chance they're in business, but Amherst is still a great place. And then I would do the graveyard shift, and I was 19 in my senior year of college. And then I just I wanted to do music, but I had whatever debt I had from school, and I was pretty terrified. um, and then I had a friend of mine I had a roommate. I went to New York and got like whatever job I could get. And I had this friend, Eric, who's still one of my closest, most important friends. And I would come back from work at this like temp agency, and I would play guitar and write and sing all night. And he was like, you need to go do this, and we had signed a lease on a little apartment, and we were crammed in, and he's like, I'll figure it out, but you've got to like go and like do it. And
Shout out, Eric.
yeah, yeah, still one of the, it's like, I would say this to somebody, there are people who listen to your podcast for a variety of reasons, and some music people will be maybe curious, but no matter what you do, the person, just the simple gesture or support from a single person can really change somebody. It can, as a parent, it can change you. As a spouse, a partner, it can change your relationship. It is, so underestimated how just a little encouragement can change somebody's life, and Eric was one of those people.
I love that. And so then we have what I'll call your master's degree, which was your 2 years of living in your car.
Right. Yeah, you said that, and I was like, "Fuck, that's really accurate."
And this is where Billy takes himself to school.
I just needed to get out of Philly. And I wasn't I didn't know what to do, so I like got in my car. My mom went to a warehouse in South Philly. This is pre-Costco, and bought me like a huge crate of Chef Boyardee beef ravioli. And she gave me that and a little bit of money that she gave me, which I had saved some money. And she was just like, "So, you if you're ever hungry, I'll know that you're gonna have some food to eat." And I to this day, I hate to say this, but Chef Boyardee canned beef ravioli is delicious to
It's
me
so
even
good.
today.
I was waiting. I was like, if you say it doesn't taste good, I'm gonna be
It's
really upset.
no, it's like, I mean, it's made of like, tires and car parts, but
Yeah, that's
it
not what this
is
is about.
it's and I would eat it cold, like out of the can. But it was a very challenging time. I had a CB radio, so before cell phones, there was like, breaker 19,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get
yeah.
this. And so I had like a magnet antenna, like I plopped on the top of my car. I had a blue Nissan Sentra, which I have a tattoo of it right here.
Amazing.
Um, and I had no air conditioning, and I just remember like I didn't know where I was going. I had my guitar, and I would just drive and then find a place if I knew somebody living in your car, playing every open mic night imaginable. I lived everywhere and nowhere. I shot pool for money in Enid, Oklahoma once. You know, discovered God on the side of Route 287 between Fort Worth and Amarillo, Texas by myself. And saw like the greatest star show I ever saw. I really, and I was also very scared, um and I had no plan B. And I think the cool thing about music, and I'd say this to anybody, is that it goes back to where we started, which is it can really speak for you and it can really speak to you.
Mm,
And when I think about Shawn Stockman and the guys from Boys to Men, it's like their experience was they like were lifted out of high school and at a very young age became very successful, and that was their experience. And there's ups and downs and peaks and valleys to that, but that is a very special um trajectory. And mine was much more a grittier, brawling, constant experience. Um, but I never, I don't shake that experience. I don't want it to go away. I like it.
mm.
That troubadour life was good for me. And I hope that our kids' generation, with all of the technology that they have, that integrating experiential challenges is is a part of their future, really.
I actually think it's one of the reasons why things like ticket sales for concerts and stuff has gone so crazy, because I think people really crave that human interaction and like being in a place with other people and experiencing
Mm.
things in the real world. So I think that's something that we're going to see more of, not less of, is people being out in the real world, because you just can't replace that tactile, visceral experience of actually living.
Yeah, I think so. And at the same time, you're going to have just a massive proliferation of content and options, some of which are going to be real and some of which are going to be virtual. I mean, there are going to be people that are going to, their life partners are going to be not human.
It's
They could
true.
be,
That's already happening.
right. And for a lot of those people, that that may be a very meaningful thing. And it's like, even if you look at elder care, it's
Yeah.
possible that one day, I mean, hopefully I'll be really old, and hopefully when I'm 100 my whole family be around me. But on the off chance, let's say I'm somewhere where I need companionship and my family isn't close, the idea that there is will be a spectacularly hard to detect a lack of humanity in some sort of virtual or
Caregiver, yeah.
creation of a caregiver that can stimulate me intellectually, talk to me, care for me, whatever. Again, this is like that quality of life possibility is really meaningful and crazy to think about.
Crazy to think about. So, through this whole journey, how old were you when you kind of I know that I think your first big hit was you said something nobody would have ever heard of that was in the UK, is that right?
Yeah, I wrote a song by myself, drunk, sorry kids, called Three is Family. I wrote it because the guy that signed me to my first sort of legit music deal, which was a producer named Rick Wake, and um, I don't even know if Rick's still around anymore. Certainly in the music business, I don't think he's particularly relevant or active, but he was like the hottest producer doing like Taylor Dane and Mariah Carey and Celine and he really believed in me. He was that like first person, and I was introduced to him by another incredibly talented producer writer named Greg Wattenberg, who's still around, very successful also. And Rick was he was an interesting guy. He found a lot of incredible talent. He had some blind spots. One of them is that his girlfriend at the time got pregnant, and he was not planning necessarily on having a kid. And I remember writing this song, one and one is two, two is me and you, two plus one is three, three is family. And I kind of wrote it for him,
Oh, sweet.
like this sort of idealized song. Um, and this was during a period where there was no internet. So if you had a hit somewhere outside of, the
Your
frequency that
radio
you could pick
radius,
up a
yeah.
radio station, you had no idea. So, but that song, even though it's a silly song, was recorded by Dana Dawson, an American artist who was signed in France at EMI. And it was a hit in the UK. In a bizarre twist of fate, when I eventually sold my first company and went and joined the board of EMI, my job in running international was replacing the legendary executive who broke that song.
Wow. That's
And
crazy.
like, and that kind of killed my soul a little bit. But anyway, I was the the thing about that song that's really
How old were you?
special. Maybe 26. I have to think of it. But it was during a really difficult time for me and personally, and I was filing for bankruptcy because I basically, like, I ran out of ravioli,
Yeah.
essentially. And I had signed to a deal. The deal was not, Rick signed me for all of my rights, everything, like as a producer, as an artist, a label, a production company, the publishing. I was like, and this is not an uncommon story, unfortunately, although it's changing now. Um, but I had this accountant named Jeff Lubchansky, who was a really nice guy, and he called me, and we had been preparing the paperwork for my bankruptcy, which was like a very dark moment for me because of how unstable it was
Yeah.
at home with my mom. And he said, "You need to come to my office right away." And I came to his office, and he had a check for me from BMI for $136,000 for this song, Three is Family, that was a hit that I didn't, I mean, it was crazy. So it's just one of those things. I'm so grateful for that song. But uh, it wasn't it's like when people ask, what's your first hit? It's not like the
Sure,
obvious
sure, sure.
thing but
But then you went
yeah.
on to obviously make all of these songs that all of us have heard of. And
Well,
to produce and like be involved in these projects with people that literally are all household names. And so where how do you get from this to that?
you know, it's a lot of failing. I don't think you get to do any of these things if you're not failing a lot. Um, I don't. I I am an incredibly hard worker, and I have always said, you know, if I'm not smarter, I'll work harder. And in so many situations in my career where I've been outgunned on a lot of levels, my work ethic will push me over the edge. I will be. I'm like a dog with a bone when I'm determined. And that has served me incredibly well. The artists and the art and the songwriters and the producers and all the people that really do well are indefatigable workers. They are obsessed about achieving what they want to achieve.
Yeah.
Um and I was, and by the way, since that period, I was signed to A&M Records as an artist. It didn't do very well. It was like very credible. I worked with like a lot of my heroes with Sting, and I did a show with Robert Plant and Jimmy Page in Spain. It was like surreal. I toured with Hall and Oates, who were from Philly, that I grew up on. I wound up writing hits for them. And then but and then I got signed, and I was putting out music through Sony. And then I actually had a record deal with Elektra Records right around the time that I was getting married to Jenna. And um, and in the context of your podcast, which I think is important, was I just wanted to be a father. I wanted to be like, I was going down the path that was, the algorithm that I started with. Like, I
Right.
could have, my relationship would be second, and who knows what distractions could have gotten in my way. But I remember I went to see Sylvia Rohn, who's a legendary executive. She's now the CEO of Epic, and at the time she was the head of Elektra. And I basically was like, I'd signed the deal, I started recording, and I said, I really want to be a husband and a father, and I think if I go forward with this record deal, that I put that in jeopardy. So I'll pay back whatever my advance
Wow.
was, and I hope you be okay if I do that. And she said, no one's ever said that to me, and you're free to go. You don't have to pay us back.
Wow.
It was like, in a business of a lot, and I don't even think she remembers it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I should
You should
send her
ask
this
her.
clip.
Yeah.
No, I don't think she would remember it, but I remember it was like a pivotal point, and I needed to make that decision.
And was
There are
it,
people that do it well.
it sounds like with Jenna, there was also like I want to do this with you because of the just the timing of this was like I see my future now because I have you in it, and I can imagine what this looks like, and I want to be there for it.
You
Right?
know,
How did you guys meet?
yeah. Well, there's a segment in between here, which is I had fallen in love with a girl and gotten married when I was younger, like a few years younger, and she had stomach cancer when we were in like sort of the period when we were planning on, like, I was saving up money for an engagement ring. And um and it was like a really terrible, life-changing experience, which, if someone looks at my life, they can very easily be like, holy shit. But it was that um I was arrested in the best way by my relationship with her name was Rima. And and then when she was sick and the prognosis was not good, um I was in my typical, like, dog with a bone fashions, like, we're gonna beat it, doesn't matter. And we had talked about getting married, which is not what you do when you're a 23, 24-year-old future rock star, or whatever I thought I
Yeah.
was gonna be. And then she came out of the hospital at NYU. We were married November of 94, and she died in June of 95. So it took me a lot of years in between that time and when I met Jenna. And I know Jenna because Jenna's older sister was friends with Rima, my
Wow.
then late wife. And it
Yeah.
wasn't, nobody was fixing up anybody with the nice widower musician boy with like economic challenges and whatever else.
What a
Um,
catch.
but exactly. Um, but it it equipped me differently. Um, and it
Really sad,
was the
Billy.
yeah, it's I feel like the luckiest person. I feel like the most blessed, lucky person. And there are more challenges. There were more challenges ahead, and there were a lot of challenges behind. Um, but I think, the spirit of my mom. My mom was a blind optimist at times, sometimes too blind. Um, but I, I had there's a charity foundation, the Rima Hortman Fund, in New York, where we have for 30 years given millions of dollars in grants to struggling artists in New York and people going through cancer treatment that for costs that insurance can't pay.
Yeah.
Um, and uh, and that's we're going to celebrate 30 years.
Wow.
And that experience prompted, as anybody watching this, they're going to go through their losses are going to be the opportunities where they're going to transform, they're going to change. And like on the one hand, I wouldn't have on the menu of life when little Billy was figuring it out, I don't think I would have ordered all of these various exotic challenges.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I don't think I would be where I am, appreciate so much, and have such a great quality life if I didn't have those experiences that really were the forcing mechanisms for me um, to raise my game.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
my so and as an autism parent and any
Yeah.
parent who has kids with special needs, it's you know these are the milestones that really define us.
Right. So Jenna goes into this relationship with you knowing that you really want to be a dad. I assume she also wants to be a mom. Did you know you wanted to have 5,000 children?
I did. I've always wanted to. And Jenna had to struggle with the years it took me to be in a place where because when I first was dating her, I was like, I'm never getting married. Go find like a nice boy who like works at Goldman Sachs. And she and all her friends tried their best to get rid of me, and I encouraged them to do so. But thankfully she like stuck around, and then the moment I got it, I got it. The moment I was like, okay, first off, I'm gonna fuck this up if I lose this girl. And secondly, I do want to have a second act as a married person and have a family. So once I knew, I was like off and running. And I think I also would say, look, you and your husband came from parents who were both divorced, right?
Mhm.
You know, I will tell someone, if you want to see a little glimpse of what your future looks like, look at your in-laws. And it's not because that condemns you to a life like them, but you really are forced to identify the familial algorithm. Like
Yes.
this is
Yeah.
what normal looks like,
Yes.
right? Normal looks like this. And I, however limited I may have been as a kid, the two women in my life had a few things in common. Both of them went to Tufts University.
Okay.
Um,
Clever
and
beans.
now, right, and now my daughter has just entered Tufts University, and which, whatever. And both of them had amazing, happily married parents. And for
Hmm.
whatever reason that I chose that, they both, Rima, who I lost, who was, very young, and Jenna, both of their parents really gave me so much of what I needed as a parent because
Yeah.
okay, now I have like a GPS system or two that
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
look to. And so should I be turning right here or left here? And then, that, I would say to my own kids, if they watch this, it's good. Look at your
Pay
future
attention.
in-laws. And it doesn't mean that like if it's bad that you don't go there, but you go in knowing, okay, I'm gonna need to work
Everybody's going to
through
have to make
this.
some active choices about how we're
Right.
navigating things. Now,
Right.
when your son was born, how old was he when he got his diagnosis?
He was 2. One of Jenna's close friends that she went to college with is a speech pathologist, um, and was brave enough to notice that my son wasn't gesturing properly. His eye contact was poor. There wasn't a lot available um, around autism at the time. I mean, there was some stuff, but there was nothing, um, but we immediately had him evaluated, and the first diagnosis you get is PDD-NOS, which is pervasive development disorder not otherwise specified. It is a soft way of pediatric specialists essentially saying your kid
Something ain't
is on the
right.
spectrum or has a challenge. And I think it is appropriately in some ways geared to acclimate parents to the process of figuring something out. um, and so I had at the time started my career, it started to take a positive turn. Jenna was already pregnant with our my younger son, now the second in line, and we were just all in it. But that also prompted me. I mean, I never imagined myself getting involved in politics or activism or anything like that, even though I grew up
Yeah.
in that. But I like couldn't believe that there weren't services, there weren't diagnostic services, that it was like impossible to get any definitive care for autism at the time. Um, and and I was told in the music business by a very famous artist I had worked with manager that, I, I was doing a lot of projects there, and he said to me, you probably shouldn't tell people that your son has a disability because you may start losing work because they'll think that you're not going to be able to, you know, deliver for them because you'll get distracted. Um, and I have to say, like, that definitely that did some damage for me, and so I kind of held it in for the longest time. And I was working, and I needed to, I was making money to support the services that my kids needed, and that things were going well for me. But um, and then I just broke out of that, and I realized, like, I have I have power. I have relationships. I'm sitting at the grown-up table in the
Yeah.
media world and in with celebrity, and I need to do something. Like, I can't just, like, it's not just my kid. It's like, then I start thinking, like, where I grew up in Philly, like, if this had been me diagnosed, my mom we would have had nothing, no services, and I'd probably have wound up institutionalized, because people who are a lot of autistic people or people with different syndromes that don't get care and are really the homeless populations in a lot of
Yeah.
cities. So I got very active. I mean, I started. I got very aggressive about policy, and there's a lawyer in the music business named Chuck Ortner who's like a big litigator, and he's represented everyone, and he was very good to me. Um, and he knew that I liked politics, like, I followed along, and he had asked me. This was around the era that Hillary Clinton was planning to run. Um, and everybody sort of said Hillary Clinton has it locked. And I'm really good at finding talent early. Like, my track record of finding artists that go on to be really, really famous is insanely high. And I remember having dinner with him.
How are you with discovering podcasters that are going to be extremely famous?
Well, I'm looking at one. I think, look, and he was like, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think there's this guy, Barack Obama. Had read his book. I think he's going to be the next president." And Chuck looked at me. He looked around at the table, and he was like we were being spied on. He's like, "I think so too. And there's a few of us that are, like, trying to put something together, and you should join us." And he was like Harry Reid and whatever. It's like all this, like, and meanwhile, I'm like, my hair is like down to my shoulders, and I'm like, I don't know. We were like, I was like bluefin tuna or something. I don't remember where we were at this restaurant. And he's like, you should have a fundraiser for him. And I was like, fundraiser? Like, Chuck, I don't know any rich people. Like, I didn't grow up with rich people. He's like, no, no, you'll figure it out. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, just do it. I'll help you write the letter. So we had moved to Connecticut at that time. And he sends me this draft of a letter, dear um, Senator Obama. He was a senator at the time. I'm like, autism is important to me, and blah blah blah. And I'd love to host you at my estate in Connecticut. And by the way, my place is like it's an awesome place, but I would never.
It's an estate now, Billy.
So Chuck says to me, "Do you have a driveway?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Is it long?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you have a gate?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "It's an estate." I
There you
was
go.
like,
There you go.
I'm like, and he basically was like, "Just shut up and send the letter." So I shut up and I send the letter, and then I'm driving with Jenna to the movies nearby in Fairfield, and I get a call from Barack Obama calling me on the phone, and I'm like, and at first I didn't know who it was. It was so funny, um, and it was anyway. He came to my house, and I would talk to him on the phone every
I'm
few weeks,
quelling. I'm
and I
quelling.
and uh, and I got very involved in um, putting together the autism policy funding policy. So I will tell you, this is a lot of I have a lot of plaques and awards, and I'm really grateful for. But most notably for me, if you is being in the I can't remember what year, but being in the Oval Office and having the President Obama sign the funding law for hundreds of millions of dollars for autism funding and handing the first pen to my son. That's the biggest hit I ever had.
Not a dry
Um,
eye in the fucking house. Oh my God, Billy. That
yeah,
is incredible.
yeah, advocating for autism families for me. That's something my son gave to me. My son, a nonverbal son who couldn't ask me to do it, prompted me to do it, gave me the courage to do it. That's all on him. And you can Google my name, and his name is Jasper and Obama, and you'll find pictures of him in the Oval Office. It's insane to me.
The way that your lives are so fully integrated with your priorities at home and your professional priorities is really kind of what this podcast is all about, because nobody said it was easy, but hearing other people do it just, I think, makes everybody else feel like it's okay to have the struggle and that none of this is supposed to
Mhm.
come easy, right?
No, and I think that um, easy or hard is in some ways as a parent it's a constant. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. It's more the long game. And I can tell you for my oldest son, um, who's been nonverbal his whole life, and I can say to other autism parents will understand this. It's like we did everything to try to give him access to anything and everything that he wanted. um, we would go to restaurants if we could, like we would go to a hibachi place. And you remember some of the really hard things, like trying to travel and stuff for um, autism parents out there. Like there's a lot of challenges, and there's also people stare at your kid, and
Yeah,
it's you have to learn to mm, take that in, and so do your other kids. It's like my daughters are heroic, and all my kids, my sons are heroic, because they have to metabolize that experience, right?
totally.
And but I remember my oldest son having a terrible, terrible episode tantrum in a restaurant, and literally, I'm a big guy, but carrying him out in my arms, just in the worst tantrum. And it was hard enough to try to just help to calm him, and then the silent judgment on the faces of all these other families, like staring, and other children staring, and you're like, and then my wife, who's the bravest parent I've ever met in my life, holding it down with my other kids. And I know I've got to just go home and help
Yeah.
um ease whatever's going on with my big guy, and getting through those experiences, which were really difficult. Now I will say, on the other hand, um after my son has never had any expressive language, he can't say yes or no or anything. Now he entered into a program. He lives in a beautiful home near us with two other young men, and we're very, very fortunate that there's like a system around him that's 24/7 care. But by some sheer miracle, he began typing to us, and he has been all there the whole time.
Have
The
you
whole
listened? Are
time.
you aware of the telepathy tapes?
Of course, of course, of course.
This has totally changed my perspective, like, just to hear you say that, I just have chills all over my whole body. I am so excited for him and for you, like, this is
But the concept of presumed competence is, it's very, I mean, it
can you
should be a given,
for
like you
for
say
for
it.
listeners, can you just define what that means for those who
It
aren't?
means that it means that if you have somebody who's has a disability, or neurological disability, or in the case of for autism, like profound autism, eh, that they are not able to articulate feelings, or to no expressive language of any kind. And we tried every modality for my son, like every pictures on iPads, I mean, you name it, nothing worked. I cannot explain how this happen, this miracle, but the undercurrent of it is presumed competence, which is, you have to presume that even though an individual who doesn't have language, and doesn't have the ability to communicate, does not mean that they don't understand, and that they are not competent, and that they are not aware of what's going on around them. And I am saying to you, like, I sheepishly saying to you, as a lot of parents of nonverbal kids would say, is that, or presumed nonverbal kids, or non-communicative kids, is that it was very hard to, I would always say to my son when I put him to bed, I know you understand everything, and we love you, but there was a real big part of me that was like, does he understand anything? And I'll tell you, the agency, there's a charity in Connecticut called Ableist. It's Abilis. What they have done for individuals, by trying to incorporate this communication typing program, it's game changing. Um, and On the one hand, like, I know we tried everything as parents, you try everything, but um, you know, I asked my son, which now I can ask him these questions, and he just was like, for whatever reason, like, I'm ready to do it. Um, but it's also funny because I get to know my
Yeah.
son. So, like, I'll give you an example. This is kind of funny.
This is we really buried the lead today, Billy.
Um,
This is huge.
well, and I haven't spoken about it, you know, publicly, more because it's been a little over a year to just try to experience it, and it was very, just, I think about the timing doing it, and I'm like, I'm so happy to be able to report this out into the universe, but it was such a unusual experience. It's like, we didn't really believe it at first, and so we would ask my son questions that only he would know, like, who's the girl in the seventh grade that like these, um and once we got past that point, it revealed, like, his personality. So once we were talking to him about different babysitters we had over the years, and he would say, "Oh, I like this one," or "This one was really nice. This one was kind of, cold or whatever. And then he wrote about one in particular. She got drunk when you guys were out of town. Like, it's like, and I remember being like, "Snitches get stitches" to my kid, which he did. But like, can you imagine? Like, so it's that has been uh just from a life experience. But that's the long game, right? That's long game parenting. It's you just keep going, and it doesn't mean that there aren't still deficits there. It doesn't mean that, you know, but what it does mean is that you can never. There's no expiration date on progress with your kids, and I think that hopefully that takes me the full distance as the father, and for us, that there isn't an expiration date, and there's not an expiration date on parents becoming better parents and evolving too. And you know I think that's easily lost. And So my son, it's another thing that my kids are teaching me.
Billy, this has been incredible. I could not be more thrilled for you and your family. Like,
Thank you.
I literally am having like a full body response to the idea that you are getting to hang out with your kid in this way now. This is incredible. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I'm so excited for people need to hear this conversation, and I cannot wait to hear the conversation that follows from this, because this was just such a journey. I mean, I feel like I just had I had a Forrest Gump experience today is what just happened.
I have had a Forrest Gump life.
Well, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. But today we got a great conversation with Billy Mann. Thank you so much for your time and your vulnerability. This has been incredible.
Thanks for having me.
Team, I need your help. If you love it here, please like and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Subscribe to the Substack for full access to this episode's show notes and join the discussion. And of course, follow me on Instagram at mutha, mutha.life, for a daily look at all things mother. Thanks for listening. Be sure to tune in next week for another Chat in the Closet. This podcast was produced by Mother Life, music by Ronan Landa. See you next time.